the same patterns that are causing him to be codependent in the relationship will be holding him back in business in some way. They will be holding him back in his health and wellness in some way. They will be detracting from the relationship with his son in some way. They just will, because every area of your life is touching.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. Tim, how's it going, man?
Fantastic, Mr. Doug Holt. How are you?
I'm doing well. I love hearing fantastic, and always good to hear from you, my friend.
Yeah, likewise. So, Doug, I want to bring to the table today a topic called patterns in relationships. I know you're a master at this with the work that you and Erin have done over the years on your own marriage, and obviously the work you've done with, well, continue to do with the guys in the activation method and in the brotherhood. So patterns in relationships. I know we touched briefly on this before the show. So what do you think? What's your experience of patterns in relationships?
Well, you know, there is no other place in our life that will get more triggered and bring up more angst than the area of our relationships, right? Especially the area of, intimate relationships. So yeah, I do have a lot of experience in this, and especially with the brotherhood. That's the group we used to call the Inner Circle. We've gone up with these guys and really taken them through some advanced exercises. So let me tell you about a conversation, Tim, that I had with one of the guys not too long ago. And I actually mapped this out. So here we have a man who's been successful. He's successful in business, never been married, has a child, but never been married, and has been in and out of serious relationships, right? And it's a very common theme with people in general. But when I started talking to him, I said, hey, look, let's map this out. And I said, walk me through it. And as he was walking me through his story, I started repeating back to him. And when we look at patterns, right, patterns happen in our lives. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't have any patterns. The girl that I dated before or the woman I was married to before, et cetera, are all different. But my guess is they followed a similar pattern, right? A similar pattern of being and what you were doing. So I'll take you through his particular pattern here. And it's going to take a little while because, like a lot of patterns, they self-feed each other and kind of create this machine. But I'll take you through it. And then after that, Tim, you and I can kind of break it down. Sound good?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So what he was doing is he would fall in love, right? Fall madly in love. He'd meet a woman, dynamic, beautiful, could be the one, right? And what he would do is, obviously, he loved her so much that he would want to do everything for her. And so he went out of his way to cater to her, to fill her cup, right? And it's what I always call filling your cup, right? He would pour into her and help her out and compliment her and show up extra. And, she had a child as well, and show up to her kids' events and really went out of his way to be there for her. And as he was doing this and filling her cup, he wasn't taking care of himself, right? So his cup was emptying. And so then he went into a pattern of a cycle, if you can imagine this. And I have this drawn out on my diagram right now. It's actually just a notepad when I was talking to him, right? He's filling the other person. And when he's filling the other person, he also needs to be filled. But since he's spending all of his time with her, he needs her to fill his cup, right? And so now what he's doing is requiring his needs to be met by her. So now they are in kind of this codependent relationship, right? He's filling her cup, and then in return, she is filling his. Now, then what is happening is when she doesn't fill his cup, let's just say she gets sick, or this particular woman would go on retreats quite often. And so she was going on a retreat and he wasn't getting his cup full, right? And if he wasn't getting his cup full, he was becoming very empty. And during that time, those periods of feeling empty and feeling alone, then he would go through a whole conversation in his head of not being enough, right? Now we're going into another pattern here. So when he was not enough, what did he need? More love, right? So we're not enough. We need reassurance that we are enough. So now he's in this pattern of thinking he's not enough. Then he's needing more love. And of course, who does he fill? Who fills his cup is his woman. So he needs her more. He's becoming more needy. And while this is going on, he's starting to get jealous, right? Jealous of men that she's talking to, jealous of people on her Facebook page, jealous of her past friends, people she does yoga with, etc. This jealousy, this is where it gets weird, right? So we've identified 2 cycles here, right? The filling of the cup and needing somebody, then going not into the not enough pattern, which is another cycle all itself, which then feeds in back to the first pattern. Now this jealousy is like a bridge to the third pattern. The third pattern he was going through, he'd get jealous, she'd be away, he'd get really jealous. And of course, when he's not jealous, he'd start to judge himself. Oh, why am I that kind of guy? I'm successful, I'm good looking, I'm in great shape. I do all these things right. I shouldn't be jealous. I trust her. She's her own woman. She's amazing. When he's getting jealous and judging himself, he's really saying, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not man enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not whatever, right? And then when he's not enough, of course, he's going into a pattern of needing to be filled and reassured. So he would go back and seek the other person because he wasn't filling his own cup. And then now he's bridging the gap from the third pattern back to the first, needing her to fill his cup, thus becoming extremely needy. So we've identified 3 cycles just for this guy, and that's where I had to stop it for him because it was just so obvious that his jaw was on the floor when I showed him this. And he's like, wow, Doug, I asked him, I was like, look, has this happened before? Your previous relationship, what was that like? Same pattern, right? He got all in, started really going all out, giving her gifts, showing up to events, taking her places that she wanted to go. And all the time while he was working, he was really tired and he wasn't recharging his batteries in this other relationship he was in, but he was always giving to her, right? And then requiring her to fill him up. But that wasn't her love language. So she wouldn't fill him up. And so he felt not enough again. And then he would start seeking her again or seeking another woman's love, right? And then he'd get jealous and go through the same pattern. In fact, his previous relationship, he not only got jealous, but he ended up cheating on this woman, right, to fill his cup, which then he went back through the guilt, judgment, not enough, seeking another, back to filling the cup. So Tim, this is so typical. Now, this happens in relationships all the time. Of course, it doesn't always happen in this particular pattern, but in my experience doing deep work with these guys, really going deep, especially with couples when we work on with them together, really what we're seeing are not only the surface pattern, but there's usually 2 to 3 patterns below that surface that are really running the show. And if you can imagine like this big gear on a machine where, one gear starts spinning and that turns the other gear, which turns the other gear, which allows this big giant machine to move. That's what our patterns can be like in relationships. And it's really fascinating to uncover those.
I was amazed then as you were going through all of that, and one thing led to another, and the few things came to mind for me as you were sharing that. Wow, there's just so many nuances that this feeds into, such as the pace of life that the guys live with, being able to understand themselves emotionally, be okay with their emotions, what it means to be a man. There's so many different ways, but bringing this back to and keeping this on track with patterns in relationships, it's kind of like when you're on a plane and they do the demonstration, the air stewardesses or the air steward does the demonstration about, okay, well, if we're going over water and there's a crash landing, then the oxygen mask will come down, and they'll make sure you put the mask on yourself first before going to help anybody else. But when we've got these patterns in relationships and we're unaware of them, and it's a codependent relationship like you described, it's almost like you're trying to take something from somebody that you're either not able to give back because your cup's empty, or you're trying to give something to somebody despite there not being anything there to give. And it's crazy. Crazy in a way of it's really, really, it blows my mind when we get into top conversations like this about patterns in relationships and how deep and intertwined they actually go, both individually as the man and the woman in the relationship and also collectively. And then, what are the kids then witnessing as well? You say as a son, oh, wow, what is the son then witnessing? This pattern that just continues. And Someone said something to me, a few years ago that I thought was really profound, and that is, what you don't take on, you pass on. And it's like,
Yep.
where will this end?
So true. Well, it's so true. I mean, when you look at these patterns, also, these are patterns of fear. These aren't patterns of love. We're in a loving relationship, but this man, and I wish I could, draw this out for the listeners right now, but I'm looking at this right now. This is a total pattern of fear. He's afraid in all three of these cycles he's in. He's in a fear state. Now, he may feel crazy attraction and love and lust and everything for this woman as he desires her so much that he's giving her everything, but he's giving her everything because he's afraid, right? It's not from a place of genuine love because he's not standing in his power. And we can talk about, obviously, when we look at different energy flows, masculine and feminine and all these other things that play into it. But when I look at this, I see pure fear. He's afraid. And you're totally right. Both of these, in this example, they have kids that are watching this play out. And for him, his young son, this is playing out time and time again, right? This is not the first relationship his son has seen this play through. Play through with his mom. And it's playing again. He's seeing his father basically succumbing to the powers that he can't control or isn't controlling or isn't choosing to, and doesn't understand his roles. Like, what are his roles for not being enough? What are his roles? What is it, the roles he serves in life for being a man or being, a quality partner in a relationship, right? Rather than being scared and be driven by fear and fear of losing somebody. That's why you have jealousy, right? You're afraid that you're not enough and, you might lose them. It's not complete love. And when you come from a place of love, these patterns can dissipate, but you still have to recognize the patterns, because if you don't recognize them really clear, they become your default. Hey guys, I had to interrupt this show because I want to talk to you about a case study we put together. It's only 11 minutes. And what we do is we go over and show you how almost 300 men have taken control of their life, have already 4x'd their business revenue, and are having more connected and intimate sex with their partner using the activation method. Now, they're doing all this without burning down their relationships and without suffering and sacrificing for their health. We want you to have this too. So go over to thepowerfulman.com/11, the number 11, and get this right now. It's only 11 minutes and it's going to show you exactly how these men have done it. All right, let's get back to the episode.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because wherever we want to point the magnifying glass, whether it's relationships or business or health, any of the areas, money, whatever, it all starts with you, me, the individual. Yeah, we see it so many times I use business as an example here because it's just easy. The guys go into business and build businesses and build successful businesses, but they do it by default and they do it out of pain. We talk a lot about being pushed by pain or pulled by pleasure. And they do it out of a desire to get out of the pain. They're pushed by pain, whether it's the feeling of being inadequate, whether it's, well, quite honestly, it's usually the feeling of being inadequate. And as a result, they go and focus on the external. And then they get their head down, they work hard, they hustle, they grind, they push, they force, they sacrifice. 10, 20, 30 years go by, they look up and they think, shit, where the fuck am I? Who am I? Where am I? They've left themselves at the start line. It's the same in a relationship. They go into the relationship seeking to get something out of it versus going into it being able to give. In a real co-creating relationship, 1 + 1 = 11. You say it amazingly when you say, you get to focus on your cup being so full that it overflows into other people's, rather than going into a relationship neglecting yourself, meaning that your cup is running dry and you're so desperate to get water or whatever from the other person to try and fill your cup because you don't know how to give it to yourself. And it's interesting because, a guy that recently joined the activation method, he was in a relationship similar to this, very codependent, and he's tried to end the relationship multiple times over the past few months. And every time he's gone to end it, he's ended up talking himself back into it. So he's gone to the lady and said, hey, look, this isn't working for me. She's like, hey, do you know what? You're right. I think we should finish it. And he's like, well, whoa, what do you mean? You know, why don't you make an effort? And why do you do this? And why? As a result, by the end of the conversation, although he's the one going into the conversation wanting to end it, by the end of the conversation, he's the one persuading her to stay. And as a result, you know, when he came into the activation method and he explained what was going on, patterns in relationships, it was very clear that he was trying to get something from her that he didn't know how to give himself. He was codependent. And he ended the relationship. And then, you know, a few days later, he reached out to me again and said, hey, Tim, got some bad news. I've got back with her. And I'm like, no. I literally said, no. You are not in a position to be in a relationship right now. You're just not. It's not good. It's not healthy for you or for her. It's codependent. Now's the time for you to focus on yourself. And then over the next, 8 to 10 weeks as we do this, if at the end of that you want to go back to her and have a conversation with her and it aligns and it works, then that's different. That's where 1 + 1 = 11. That's where your cup is overflowing into somebody else's. You're not dependent on her to give you something that you don't know how to give yourself. Whether it's a codependence on a relationship or on money or on how big you look or on cars or whatever, it's codependence. It's regardless. And, a lot of people, in my experience, I was there too. It's not like I'm any kind of saint. I can speak so passionately about this because I've been through it, So it's so key for you in a relationship to be able to have that time and space to focus on yourself. And what we often see is once the men focus on themselves and really understand how to fill their own cup and break the patterns that have been controlling them and ultimately controlling the relationship, the partner in the relationship then has a choice. Because sometimes in a codependent relationship, as the man takes the lead on changing this and breaking those patterns, obviously things change because the relationship rules were formed under regulations or whatever, under an energy from before that wasn't working. And now that energy and those patterns have been broken and changed, and you see yourself differently, you know how to fill your cup, and you see the relationship differently, and you want to create some new rules, that is where it can open up a whole host of different things. As you and I, Doug, have seen so many times with the men, haven't we? Sometimes people end up getting divorced because the relationship has been that codependent that when one person is able to break the patterns that have been ruling the relationship and the other one doesn't want to, and we've spoken about this on previous podcast episodes, then obviously both people have a choice. But, patterns in relationships are so, so huge. And I can say hand on heart 100%, the patterns that you described for this guy will be holding him back in business. Regardless of him having a successful business, the same patterns that are causing him to be codependent in the relationship will be holding him back in business in some way. They will be holding him back in his health and wellness in some way. They will be detracting from the relationship with his son in some way. They just will, because every area of your life is touching.
Oh, it's so true. This guy in particular, when he get in this pattern, he'd be stuck, right? And so his business would stagnate because he was stagnating. His friendships went away because he was so busy. He had nothing to give. When I say give, like no energy to give, right? It bleeds over into every area of your life. And, if you're in your 20s and you're hustling, there's no way you're going to believe me until you experience this. But any man or woman listening to this in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, this is true. It just bleeds over into all areas. And that's why it's so important to go through this and identify these as soon as possible. Obviously, at the Alpha Reset, we don't go into this level of depth, but we go over a lot of these with these men, and they bring up the areas because as men, Tim, we don't talk about this stuff. Like you're going to get a pint or going to get a beer or whatever with your buddies. This isn't the type of conversation you typically have. And if some guy brings up something like this, then he's in the shit. Otherwise you don't talk about it. And very rarely does it ever, ever, ever come up unless that person is going through a divorce or something along those lines. And so that's why these, men, if you're out there listening to these patterns and identifying these patterns, and a lot of times you can't see the forest from the trees, so get someone to help you identify what they are and how they're serving you, because they are serving you in some way, shape, or form. Even if you're like, oh, crap, Doug, well, how can these serve me? They're horrible patterns, as Tim alluded to, but you're getting something out of this, right? There's something that you're getting, whether playing the victim card, somehow makes you feel good, or, giving of yourself so much is your previous viewpoint from Disney fairy tales and when you're like 6 or 7 of what a man should be like. And trust me, women aren't looking for someone who is going to be needy and codependent for them. I can guarantee that for you. They're looking for a strong man who can identify their power, their patterns, step into their power, and do the work necessary to better themselves, right? And move forward. And that's what a true relationship is. And it's not a relationship on codependence. It's a relationship where you're supporting the other person, filling your own cup first so you can show up more powerfully each and every time to the relationship.
Yeah, it's such a huge point. And, these patterns can be broken together as well. As long as there's a willingness on both sides from the man and the woman, to a willingness and openness really to be able to explore what the patterns are and take ownership of them, without judgment, without blame, without, feeling like a victim. It takes a really, I don't want to say a high level of conversation, because I wouldn't say it is a high level of conversation, but it does take a high level of ownership, and security is a word that's coming to mind within yourself and within the partnership that you're in, to be able to know that if you take ownership for a certain pattern or a certain way of behavior, then that other person is going to start layering on top of you lots of other things you've done wrong and you could do better, in my opinion. It gets to be an opportunity for you guys to start owning up together about the patterns and what's going on, having an honest, open conversation, and then moving forwards together, because it really can be something that you guys move together on. I say you guys, that people move together on. We've seen it so many times when the guys do the work through the work we do with them in the activation method, and they start to own up to a lot of their patterns and start to shift them and change them. But quite honestly, sometimes the wives or the girlfriends don't want to go there with them. And I don't fully know what gets said in the relationship. I'm not a fly on the wall. I don't know how those conversations are fully handled. But I know in my experience, in my own relationships, even with Amelia, I could not have these kind of conversations with my ex. I just couldn't. It was one of the reasons why we grew apart. You either grow together or you grow apart. And God, I proposed to her. We booked the wedding. We bought the house. I did so many things, partly because I wanted to make sure that I did all I could. But I just couldn't have these conversations. She felt she wouldn't own up to what her patterns were, because I don't know if it's because she didn't see them, although sometimes I'd tell them what they were rather. I'd have to, because it was causing me so much pain, and I was like, "Hey, listen, bitch, you doing this?" It wasn't like
how'd that go over?
Yeah, it wasn't like that, but I'd do it in conversation of owning up to my own. But every time I'd own up to my own, and she wouldn't want to go there and own up to hers, well, you can imagine how that went down. And we just, the relationship just wasn't working. We were on different wavelengths. We were just growing apart. Whereas Amelia, for example, we've been together for quite a few years now, and we've grown a lot as individuals and collectively over the past few years. Sure, there's always room for more, but the one thing, in my opinion, that has been the catalyst in us being able to experience so many amazing things together and continually up level together has been the ability that we have to have those honest conversations about patterns and about how we feel and about what's going on without either one of us feeling victimized or feeling judged. Because then it opens everything up to, okay, well, what's next? And it's key. It's so key in order to break the pattern to be able to have that kind of conversation. You know it, Doug. You know, you've had many amazing conversations with Erin. You guys have been through, you know, amazing growth together. So you know how it is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and guys listening to this, and women too, but guys listening to this in particular, know I'm speaking from an experience of already being in the valley, right? I've been through these patterns, and my patterns were probably 10 times worse than this guy's. I was so deep in the shit in my relationship and my patterns and my holy, you know, I'm so holy and high on the horse. Man, you know, it took me years and years and years of reading just about every book on relationship, on communication, taking every seminar, coaches, the whole nine. So Tim, I don't want anybody to think that, you know, I walked into this being able to communicate, look at patterns, do pattern interrupts, and, you know, do Byron Katie's Judge Your Neighbor or any of that stuff just naturally. This took me a lot of work. I was your stereotypical alpha guy, right? Athlete, business owner, pillar of the community. I was not what you would call a deep level communicator in relationships by any level. And so, you know, guys, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, shit, I'm not going to do any of this. Like, I'm just so far from that. Trust me, it starts with the first step, doing the work, you know, taking care of yourself. When you're filling your cup, you're doing the work to improve yourself. That is not only the first step, but it's the biggest step and it's the biggest barrier. And once you start doing that, all of these pieces start to fall in order. It's like working out, right? It gets really hard to get to the gym the first time. You know, you're sore, you get tired, you don't know what to expect. But over time, you just start doing it. And then your body starts to fall into shape. And then you start putting on muscle. When you put on muscle, you burn fat faster. And just everything becomes easier. Well, relationships are like that, but 10x. It becomes so much better because you have the tools in your tool belt and you actually have the optics or the visibility to see what's going on. So I don't want to paint this rosy picture that everything's always been great in my areas of relationship, because they certainly haven't. Right. But it's something we've been working on. But I want to make everybody here aware of their patterns and recognizing it. And the worst thing you can do, guys, is hide from this. Right. It's okay to have these and these patterns come up and continually recognize. Tim and I coach each other still to this day, making sure each other are on point and making sure you have someone at that really high caliber and high level to give you optics, to see when things are coming up and kind of peel back a layer of that onion to allow you to be that man you know you are.
Yeah, so true. So true. So Doug, wrapping this up, how would you say wrapping this up? I'm probably about to open up a can of worms here, but how would you suggest a guy actually confronts the wrong word, takes ownership of his patterns in a relationship? Let's say we want to leave the guys right now with one usable tool they can take away from this. So let's say the guys have started to understand some of the patterns. They know what they are and they want to break them. How would you recommend that they go ahead and approach their partner with this new awareness so that it creates a conversation to then shift these patterns?
A couple things. One, I'm going to say go to an alpha reset. Get your ass to an alpha reset. Now, I know that sounds self-serving, but the truth is I would be holding this back. I would be not giving you my honest answer if I wasn't telling you that I think this is the best thing for you, right? Yes, it's something I'm involved in, but I wouldn't be involved in something I didn't think was the best. So go to an alpha reset and get your shit together. That's number one, by far. Second thing, that's before you have this conversation, by the way. Second thing, if you're ready to have this conversation with your partner, sit them down and have the energy be good. And then take ownership of what your side of the street is. Do not do it Tim 1.0 did. Do not point out your partner's bad habits. Do not point out your partner's shortcomings. Do not point out their their mistakes. Do not point out anything about them at all. Take 100% ownership of this. If this sounds weird, this is kind of if Jocko Williams, right? He's got, I might be pronouncing his name wrong and I apologize, but he's got extreme ownership, right? This is kind of like that in the area of relationships, but it's really important what I call owning your side of the street, right? Don't point across the street at your neighbor, and in this case, your partner, the trash on the lawn or the grass not cut. Own your side of the street until you are perfect before you even look across there. So own your own stuff. And so an example, what I might have, a quick conversation, Tim, because I know we got to get ready for the next Alpha Reset here. But in a quick conversation I might have, if I was this guy, is I would turn to my partner and go, geez, you know what? I realize that I love you so much that I've been pouring myself into you. And as such, I've been emptying myself out and requiring you to pour you back into me without even talking to you about it. I apologize for putting that burden on you and not taking care of myself in a way that's constructive for us in the long term. Right? That's just me. And I did that off the cuff, but I'm just taking ownership of what I'm doing. I'm not making myself wrong. I'm not making her wrong or anything. I'm just identifying the situation and what I've done in this situation and what I'm going to do moving forward to rectify that problem.
Wow. Amazing. I love it. I love it. So guys, Doug has shared with you some fantastic knowledge and tools as well. And if any of you know Doug, then you'll know the amazing marriage that him and Erin are both committed to and have also both created. I mean, whenever I spend time with you guys, I really think, wow, like I'm going to take that away. I'm going to do this with Amelia. When I see you guys as parents, everything, like it's inspiring. I'm really, really grateful to be able to be in such close proximity to you and your family and your marriage. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And like Doug said, guys, if you are feeling the call, then I'd love to see you at Alpha Reset. I would really love to support you through a process that has the potential to transform your life. It's not my words, it's the words of the men that routinely go through it. So guys, thank you for joining us today. I wish you an amazing day and I wish you all the best.
See you next time, guys. Take care.